let's talk about the macro environment. So if we're going to have a successful clean tech economy, we also exist in a very uncertain world. And this applies outside clean tech. It doesn't matter whether we're talking clean tech or not. But there are many things about clean tech which make it very susceptible to the uncertainties. I mean, clean technologies tend to be, at least up until now, a little bit more expensive than their traditional alternatives. We have a market in which the capital markets are very uncertain. There is regulatory uncertainty, and we know that regulation has a big impact on the clean technology space. We have commodity prices which are fluctuating dramatically. One of the things that people often say to me is that biofuels, for instance, there's this bizarre thing that goes on every time that biofuels look as though they're about to become economically viable. Somehow or other the price of oil seems to fall. One of those bizarre things, one of those bizarre coincidences. So the investors lose their money, and it happens repeatedly. So we have this strange place, commodity prices and so forth. It's very unstable. How on earth can clean tech take off in such an unstable world?
Well, I'll start with the first idea. So we probably all can agree, hopefully, that oil is a finite resource, right? It's finite. I mean, it's going away. If we look at the number of new areas where they're drilling, it's every decade it's less and less and less. So they're finding less places to drill, less places to, and the reserves are diminishing. So it's not a question of if it's going to happen, it's about when it's going to happen. And so all of this, when we talk about legislation, we talk, there's a correctional bill, AB 32, which maybe some of you are familiar with, which basically states in California, basically states that by the year of 2020, there's a 29% decrease. There should be a 29% decrease in CO2 emissions across California. And California, unfortunately, is the second highest polluter in the United States and the 14th highest in the world. So we have a huge, huge responsibility to drive this. And so I think that a couple things. We know that oil is finite, and when we all kind of understand that, we all should be looking at alternative ways to solve this problem. And also that the legislative environment in California is actually improving quite a bit, where we have these bills that set a foundation for the future. So I think that us with these companies, we are taking advantage of that. We're leveraging that and starting to drive the change. But it's going to take a while. But the change is coming.
Terrific. Anyone else?
I would say that a big part of the uncertainty revolves around the fact that there's a lot of incentives that need to be put in place, that are being put in place now in order to spur growth in the industry. You have rebates for automobiles. You can get paid for solar energy. There's all sorts of things which taxpayers are funding. And I would say that until the industry gets to the point where economically things are self-sustaining without incentives or with far less incentives, then it'll be subject to these variations in policy. But I believe that in certain technologies we are getting close to that point. And so sometimes it's good to have that initial push so that you can develop enough volume and manufacturing to drive costs down. But then hopefully after that, every business has to be sustainable kind of on its own.
Yeah. And I would add to that. I think you saw a great example here with Prop 23 that was just out. With the uncertainty that brought, you just saw a lot of people sitting on their hands, a lot of the power buyers. I had a meeting with PG&E, and they'd only entered into 4 large-scale contracts, and they were all under market, not PV markets, because they, in essence, were saying, if we don't have to buy it, why should we do this? But as soon as that changed, as soon as the voters voted, then there was certainty again, and now it's moving forward. I think the same way you see that with the ARA this year, where last February they came out, a year ago February, with the ITC cash grant. That, and we'll talk, I'm sure, about that, that just stimulated this whole industry, at least on the PV side, where people were just doing all they could to try to get that cash grant because they needed that to really be profitable. But that drove pricing in my industry. We were looking at power purchase agreements in the 18-cent range. That drove them down into the 12-cent range. I mean, just because of the added impulse of people coming and wanting to create this, their projects and get that funding, it truly drove the markets because it increased the number of technology advances, it increased the throughput on factories, it made a huge difference. So we need them. When we have them, I think it really will drive change, but without them, we haven't quite reached that tipping point yet.
And a PPA is an agreement between a utility and someone who provides the power.
That's right. It's a procurement. It's a power purchase agreement. So a large solar farm like ours would enter into an agreement with Southern California Edison or Pacific Gas and Electric to buy electricity at a certain price for a long period of time. Usually they're 20 years.
One of the ways of reducing the uncertainty in this space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That way, when oil prices go to 40, we don't shut down.
Right. Good. We like this. Okay.